Jai Gurudev, everybody. Welcome back to the online session of Bhakti Marga philosophy. Today we're gonna speak about the Vaishnava tradition, the theology and the philosophy in the tradition. Before we start, I want to make a short summary of the last session, what we did. So in the last session, we spoke about Vedanta philosophy. It is relevant for today's session. So today's session is about the Vaishnava tradition, and the Vaishnava tradition is related with the Vedanta philosophy, which we spoke last time. So let me just make a short recap of last time. So the Vedanta philosophy, we said, is a philosophy which comes from the Vedas, more exactly from the end part of the Vedas, the Upanishad. The Vedanta philosophy speaks about metaphysical principles. It speaks mainly about three principles. It speaks about the Brahman, which is the source of all existence. It speaks about the Atman, the spiritual self, and it speaks about Prakriti, this material reality, and how they are interrelated. Okay, this is what mainly the Vedanta philosophy speaks about. We have said different scriptures are being taken to make a Vedanta discipline: the Prashtantraya, the Upanishad, the Brahma Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, and every different discipline makes a conclusion on those three principles, because the Vedas itself are not conclusive. They are very open for interpretation, a lot of analogies and metaphors. So different schools interpret them differently, but they all agree on some principles, again on three principles. The three principles they agree on are that there is this Brahman, this all-compassing force, and that force is the material and efficient cause of everything. So to say, it is the creator and the creation, the pot and the potter, yeah. That the Atma, the individual self, is bound by karma to a cycle of samsara, of reincarnation. We have heard this in our other sessions about the basics of Hinduism, the variety or diversity in the unity, and that moksha, liberation from this cycle of reincarnation, is an achievable goal for human beings, and it's a desirable goal. So far, Vedanta schools agree. Further, the details about those ideas about the Brahman, the Atma, the path to realize or to get liberation, that is all open for interpretation in the different schools. We have mentioned different schools: ADVAITA, the non-dual school; DVAITA, the dual school; the VISHISHTA DVAITA, the qualified non-dual, and so on and so on. And today we're going to look at Vaishnavism, where Vaishnavism fits into this Vedanta, and what else comes along with Vaishnavism. Okay, so therefore today the lecture is on Vaishnavism, and more specific Sri Vaishnavism, which I will explain why we go on, what that means. So before we start with the detail, I come back to this little diagram, which you might remember from a previous session, where I spoke about the structure of Hinduism. We have said that Hinduism is a diversity in the unity. There's one God, one reality, one truth, expressed in many ways, revealed in many different ways. I have made the example of a tree. If you remember, I've spoken about a tree which has roots and a trunk, which is the basis. And out of this root and trunk, there comes then different branches. Yeah, that is how the tradition is built. I've said the root and the trunk are universal principles, these eternal principles like Brahman, ultimate force, like Atman, the individual self, like karma, the law of action and reaction, samsara, the cycle of reincarnation, the material creation, the material world, the righteous way of living to attain finally moksha. If you remember, we have spoken about that in a nice sentence where you have said, I am an Atma striving for the Brahman, but because of my karma, I'm bind to this material world, to Jagat, Shrishti and Pralaya in a constant cycle of reincarnation. By living according to Dharma, the righteous way, I can attain moksha. All of this is being guided by divine incarnations, the spiritual master, which enlightens us. Yeah, those principles are principles which more or less every Hindu will agree on. The roots and the trunk of the tree called Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, the universal, eternal, cosmic laws. Then we have the different branches which come up, like, for example, Vaishnavism, Shaktism, Saivism, and many others. These are now different schools, different traditions which take this principle and interpret them in a different way, have different approaches. I explained to you, it's a little bit similar like in the Christian tradition where you have, I take always the Christian tradition as an analogy, or as a confront to see, because many people are living in the Christian tradition or know the Christian tradition. In the Christian tradition, the roots and the trunk would be Jesus Christ being the Savior who has lived, who has died on the cross, has resurrected to take away the sin of the world, to save all those who believe in Him. Yeah, all Christians believe in that. But then you have different branches coming off. The Catholics, the Orthodox, the Protestants, the Anglicans, and so on. They all believe in Jesus Christ. But then the further details about their faith, they differ, and so different traditions have been created. The same you have in Hinduism. Yeah, you get the concept. So we are now in this first branch, Vaishnavism. Vaishnavism is the tradition which we follow in Bhakti Marga, and now we're gonna have just a broad insight. What is Vaishnavism in its gist? Yeah, what is it in essence? Let us look at that. Vaishnavism in its essence. Okay, Vaishnavism now is a theology. Theology comes from theos, meaning God. So there's now God being involved. If you just go back to the last lesson, last lecture from last week, we've spoken about Vedanta philosophy, and that different disciplines, also Vaishnava schools, are Vedanta philosophies. So we have to differ between a philosophy and a theology. Okay? We're now speaking about the theology. The theology in Vaishnavism. What is that? The theology is that there is a God. Who is that God? That God is Vishnu. Vishnu or Narayana. Narayana, the ultimate, which literally translated means the one who is present within everything, and everything is present within him. So there is now a personified God, supreme existence, and Vaishnavism speaks about that form of God and all his different manifestations, yeah, because God has come over and over again in this world to bring the message, this eternal law. Yeah, so this supreme being is the savior of the souls from the cycle of samsara. In the Vaishnava traditions, there's a general belief that there is this ultimate force, this Brahman, which was talked before in the Vedas, which we have talked over and over again in relation to Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, this ultimate reality, which was not yet defined what it is. Now in a Vaishnava tradition, that becomes God, Narayana, the one who is present within everything, and everything is present within him. And by his grace, the souls are being saved from this cycle of samsara. Yeah, so the idea of personified deity and the idea of saving grace is present in the Vaishnava theology. What else? We see here, it says on point number 3, that it is rooted in the Shrutis, the Vedas, but not overly Vedic. If you remember the Shrutis in the section where we spoke about the Hindu scriptures, we had 2 sections, yeah? 2 main sections. On one side, the Shrutis, the revealed scriptures, that what has been heard, which has been downloaded by the rishis, received by divine perception. And the other scriptures, the smritis, that which has been told, histories, and so on. Yeah, so the Vaishnava tradition is rooted in the Vedas, in the Shrutis. But it's not only Vedic. It is actually overly rooted in the smritis, this other part, which is talking about the history, about, like, you remember the Vaishnava Puranas, like the Bhagavad Purana or Srimad Bhagavatam, the Itihasas, like the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, and so on. In these scriptures, the mentioning of God as Narayana, as Vishnu, as his different incarnations is much more present. Yeah, therefore, it's very much rooted. Vaishnavism is rooted philosophically in the Vedas, but it is also rooted in the Smritis in relation to this deity. And the aim, the last point, the aim of every Vaishnava, the aim of Vaishnavism itself, is to build a loving relationship of service and surrender to the Lord, who gives salvation by his grace. So the saving grace of God, loving relationship. Yeah, it has, you can see already in which direction this goes. It is already, if we take the first lesson where we had Hinduism compared, where I did a broad comparison with Christianity and so on, we can see that there are elements which are very close or very similar to actually the Abrahamic faiths. Yeah, one God, one ultimate reality, which, yes, we are striving to, yes, we are doing our part, but ultimately his saving grace, his love, is that which saves us, and we are having a loving relationship with him. That is the main idea in Vaishnavism. Okay, so this is a general idea in Vaishnavism. Again, let's go back to the tree. The tree has roots, has a trunk. Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, with its eternal principles, are the roots and the trunk. Yeah, there is a Brahman, the Atma strives for it because of karma, it is bind, and so on and so on. Now we have seen that there's different branches coming off, Vaishnavism, Saivism, Shaktism. We have now looked into the Vaishnava branch. Yeah, you remember the Vaishnava branch? Now that Vaishnava branch in itself has again different branches coming off. How can you understand that? Again, if I take the example of Christianity, if we take Christianity's foundation, roots and trunk as the idea of Jesus Christ being the Savior who has come, lived, died on the cross, resurrected for our sins, taking away the sin of the world, etc., etc., then we have the different branches, the Orthodox, the Anglicans, the Protestants, the Catholics, and so on. Now if we take the branch of the Catholics, for example, in the branch of the Catholics you have again different branches coming off. like the Franciscans, the Dominicans, the Benedictines, the Jesuits, etc., etc. So many different traditions are again in that one branch. They have now more in common than the Catholics and the Orthodox have. Still, they differ to some extent, so that different schools have developed. And the same principle we have in Hinduism. Hinduism, these principles everybody is united on. Then they differ in their ideas. Now we have the Vaishnava branch where we have these ideas which we all agree on, that the ultimate is Narayana and all his different manifestations. Yeah, in the Hindu tradition, you might know, as I said, there's one God who reveals himself in many different ways. God creates, he maintains, he dissolves. Vishnu is this aspect of God who maintains everything. He is the one who maintains the universe so that the cycle goes on. Yeah, Creator Brahma, Vishnu maintains, Shiva dissolves, that the new creation comes. Everything is cyclic. We spoke about this in the time. The maintenance is very important, and it is said that whenever there's a decline of righteousness in the world, God incarnates in this world and brings the message, creates again a balance. How many times he has come? Uncountable times. Uncountable times. So great manifestations, great avatars, divine incarnations like Krishna is this Narayana. Rama, but also Jesus Christ or the Buddha. Yeah, they're all manifestation of that absolute which have come to bring again a certain order. That now the Vaishnavas agree on. He is coming, he is existing, he is saving us by his grace. But now the details of that, there's again different schools in the Vaishnava tradition which differ to some extent. And there we have 4 schools. 4 different branches come now out from this Vaishnava branch. Okay? 3 branch Vaishnavism. In Vaishnavism, different branches coming off. The branches are called SAMPRADAYAS. Sampradaya means a spiritual tradition. I repeat, Sampradaya means a spiritual tradition. As I have told you before, the Hindu tradition, even the texts, even the Vedas, which have been compiled, not written down, they have been compiled, they have existed from time immemorial. They have been compiled 5,000 years ago, but they have always existed before. How have they been transmitted? They have always been transmitted in an oral way by a succession, by the master who gives it to the disciple, and the disciple which then masters it, gives it to his disciple. And like this knowledge has been passed on over and over again. So this chain of succession, of passing on knowledge, creates a parampara. Yeah, a parampara is the chain of succession. We have talked about it in the guru-disciple relationship. And once a chain is created, it creates a sampradaya, a spiritual tradition, yeah, a certain line. This whole line then of this parampara creates a tradition which is a sampradaya. And there's 4 different Vaishnava sampradaya, 4 main Vaishnava sampradaya, generally accepted Vaishnava sampradayas. So far so good? So these 4 sampradayas have now, there's a feature in them which is important. The feature is that all of them, they have a founding deity, as you can see up, the founding deity, and they have a principal acharya. So the founding deity means the relationship what that aspect of God has with the ultimate Narayana. They're all coming from Narayana, and different aspects of himself, which relation they have with him. Our sampradaya, our spiritual tradition, is in this diagram the first one, the first column. And the first column has as its founding deity Mahalakshmi. You see, Mahalakshmi, or a different name for Mahalakshmi is Shri. Shri or Mahalakshmi is the Divine Mother third of Narayana. So she is intimately in a loving relationship, always serving the ultimate. So this relationship what she has been passing on to different aspects of God, Vishwakshena, who then manifested as Nam Alvar, and so on and so on. And that has been passed on through generations and generations, this knowledge, what she describes in relation to the Absolute, has been passed on till at some point it reaches a principal acharya, somebody who takes all this knowledge and now makes a compilation out of it, makes a conclusion out of it, makes a Vedanta school, a Vedanta discipline out of it. And as you remember last time, what is necessary for a Vedanta discipline to be created? A teacher or an acharya, a sage, has to give a conclusive doctrine, a conclusive idea on these principles of the Absolute, the individual self and material world in relation to three scriptures, right? The Brahma Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita. These principal acharyas have done that, and through that established a certain discipline, a certain school. Before, the knowledge was still there, everything was still there, but it was not mainstream, it was not clear, put in a framework. Okay? So we have Vaishnavism, to read Vaishnavism, which is a theology believing in Narayana or Vishnu and all his different incarnations as the Absolute. This Brahman is Narayana, the Absolute, the one who is present within everybody and everything is present within him. He saves the souls from this cycle of reincarnation through his grace. And in this Vaishnava traditions, there's four main branches which now have slightly different interpretation approaches and ideas. These are the fours which are shown here. They are founding deity, from where this knowledge comes, and a principal teacher, a principal acharya. Ours is the first one here. The founding deity is Mahalakshmi or Shri. The principal acharya is RAMANUJA'S. And then later on you see down Paramahamsa Vishwananda, because in that school of thought he was later on initiated, because this knowledge was kept on being passing down through different teachers that we're going to speak in the next section, in the next lecture. For now I want you just, there is what is Vaishnavism, and there is different branches within Vaishnavism, and ours is the Sri Vaishnava tradition. Shri, which is a word for Lakshmi. Yeah, so the Sampradaya, the spiritual tradition, can be mentioned in relation to the original deity, the founding deity, which is Lakshmi or Shri, therefore Shri Sampradaya or Shri Vaishnava, or the principle can be also called Ramanuja Sampradaya, the spiritual tradition in relation to Ramanuja, the principal acharya, or Shri Sampradaya, this spiritual tradition in relation to Mahalakshmi, which was the founding deity. Okay? Another divine origin and another founding acharya, and also another conclusion in their philosophy, but that's not what we're going to look now into. Just for your information, for example, just that you get maybe an idea, you see in the second line here, you see the Madhava Sampradaya, because it was the principal acharya was Madhava Acharya. Brahma, the creator, is the founding deity. And in this school, in this tradition, there comes later on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which was then the founder of a new school, the Gaudiya tradition, which you might have heard, the Gaudiya tradition, from which a very known tradition is coming forth, the ISKCON the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the Hare Krishna movement, is in that school of thought centered, yeah? So just that you get the idea and see, okay, that's why there's differences maybe in some aspects. Good. So we are now focusing, as I said, in the first line, which is the Shri Sampradaya in relation to Lakshmi, or Ramanuja Sampradaya. Like I said, these are the four main teachers of this: Shri Sampradaya or Ramanuja Sampradaya, Madhava Sampradaya, because the founding Acharya was Madhava Acharya, this sage here in the second picture, Vallabha Sampradaya, spiritual tradition according to Vallabha Acharya, which is the sage in the third picture, and Nimbarka Acharya or Nimbarka Sampradaya, the spiritual tradition in relation to Nimbarka Acharya, which is in the fourth picture. So we are focusing on the first picture, which is Sri Ramanuja Acharya, and therefore the Ramanuja Sampradaya or Shri Sampradaya. That's where we are now going into. So, recap, there's the tree, the roots, Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, one branch, Vaishnavism. From one branch now comes one off, which is the Shri Sampradaya, with the origin of Mahalakshmi as the deity and the founding Acharya being Ramanuja Acharya. Okay. And the main deity, Sriman Narayana. So, Sriman Narayana, like I said already, literally meaning the one who is present within everything and everything is present within him. This paradox, very beautifully put. He is often depicted lying down on his snake bed, Adishesh. At his feet is Mahalakshmi, massaging his feet, serving him as a symbol of service. So Mahalakshmi, like I said, is his consort, the most closed one, and she is in the Hindu tradition the deity for spiritual wealth and material wealth. She is the deity of good fortune, the divine mother of good fortune. The divine mother in the Hindu tradition has always a place. There's always the idea of male and female, Lakshmi, Narayana, Shiva, Shakti, Uma Shankara, Radha Krishna, Sita Ram. Yeah, there's always the male and female part. The divine mother is the creative power of God. The whole creation is through the divine mother. She is an intercessor which helps us to reach the divine. Yeah, so again, a very similar idea like we have to some extent in some Christian ideas, where the Mother Mary, a form of the divine mother, she is the intercessor which intercedes on our behalf. The love of the mother, the motherly love, the divine mother, Mahalakshmi being the divine mother of good fortune, spiritual and material abundance, and being in this eternal loving relationship with the Absolute and having no other desire than guiding all the children to that state. So when we have looked at this, yeah, Mahalakshmi, the origin, the founder Ramanujacharya, the principal deity, the main deity Sriman Narayana, then we have concluded the idea of, okay, Vaishnavism as theology. This is Vaishnavism as theology in a nutshell, yeah, in a very simple, short way expressed. Vaishnavism is theology. Vishnu Narayana's, his manifestations are the Absolute, he says, through his grace. There's different traditions in it. They believe all those first principles, but now they differ. How they differ, that is the philosophy. So in the theological part, almost they agree. To great extent, all those four schools would agree that Narayana is the Supreme. All of them would agree that it is the purpose to have a loving relationship with Him. All of them would agree that it is His saving grace which can us ultimately give final liberation and attainment. That we all agree. So the theology is quite agreeable among those different schools. The philosophy differs. Now we have a look at the philosophy which is in the Sri Sampradaya, in the spiritual tradition of Mahalakshmi, or Ramanuja Sampradaya, the spiritual tradition in relation to RAMANUJA'S. Ramanuja's philosophy. Philosophy, as we talked last time, means the love for wisdom, and Vedanta is a philosophy which derived from the Vedas, from the last part of the Vedas, the Upanishads. So last time we spoke about the different schools, and the philosophy in our tradition, in the Sri Sampradaya, is called VISHISHTA, ADVAITA, VEDANTA. VISHISHTA, ADVAITA, VEDANTA. That's the philosophy RAMANUJA'S established. What does Advaita mean? Dvaita means duality, Advaita means non-duality, monism or monotheism. Yeah, one reality. It's only one God. So our tradition is an Advaita tradition, which believes there's only one ultimate reality. Who is that ultimate reality? What is that ultimate reality? Narayana, God the Absolute. But there's this word Vishishta in front. Vishishta means qualified. So the unity is now qualified by something. Yeah? Because there's another school which is just Advaita, not qualified non-dualism, but just non-dualism. The Advaita school in principle would say there's only this Brahman, and it's only a pure undifferentiated consciousness. Nothing else. The soul is that Brahman. The material world doesn't exist, it's all just an illusion. That is pure monism, which is not what Ramanujacharya proposed, what he read from the holy scriptures, what he experienced himself, what he got revealed by the great sages, and that's not what Paramahamsa Vishwananda teaches. So we speak about a qualified non-dualism. It's a similar idea like when you take a car, for example. We say the car, right? A car to drive. We don't say a composition of metal and plastic and cylinders and suspensions and consoles and seats and windows and so on and so on. No, we just say a car. So it's one thing. But this one thing is qualified, made out of many different parts. The same idea is with this human body. We say the human body. We don't say again the composition of bones, flesh, and skin, and organs, and cells, and DNA, and blood, and so on and so on. No, we say the human body. It's one thing, it's one organism. But this one organism is composed of many different parts. Many different parts make this one organism. And the same way, God, ultimate, is one. But He is composed of many different things. What are those two things? That is what we're going to look now, what we're going to see now. What is the main principle in the Vishishta Advaita philosophy? How is this non-dual, one absolute God qualified? That's the idea of the three tattva, the three principles of reality, the three natures of reality, three tattva. Three tattvas is consisting of one's chit, which is conscious beings or sentient beings, spirit, if you want. Achit, unconscious being, non-sentient beings, matter, if you want. And Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, which pervades everything and controls everything. So this oneness is qualified into three parts: conscious beings, unconscious beings, and the Supreme Lord as Ishvara, as the controller, which holds everything together and controls everything. That is how God is qualified. Conscious beings, myself, my soul, my Atman, is a conscious entity. It's a sentient being. I can experience reality through that. This body, on the other hand, just the body itself, is achit, unconscious. This clicker here is unconscious. This table here is unconscious. This picture here is unconscious. Matter in itself is unconscious, achit. Conscious beings like the soul, the spirit, the Atma, that is conscious. And Ishvara is that which now holds all together. These three principles are the principles which are the three qualifications of God in the Sri Sampradaya. Tri Tattva. Okay? That's why it's called qualified non-dualism. Like the human being with all his parts, like the car with all its parts. Further, what is the goal according to the Vishishta, ADVAITA, Vedanta philosophy, this qualified non-dualism Vedanta school? What is the ultimate goal, the Purushartha? The goal of this tradition, or the goal of this path, of these ideas, of this way of living, is to attain moksha. Firstly, moksha. As you remember, maybe when we spoke about the Vedanta philosophy, we have said they are agreeing, the different schools are agreeing on three principles: that Brahman exists, and it's this Brahman, the cause of everything, it's the ethereal cause of everything, the ultimate reality. That is one point. That the Atman, the individual self, is bound by karma to the cycle of reincarnation. That was the second one. And the third one, that this Atman can attain from this cycle of reincarnation, can get liberation from the limited reality, the limited physical reality, which is always connected with suffering, of course. Yeah, not to forget. A physical reality, a dual reality, is always with high and low, and misery, with cold and warm related. So the liberation from the material reality, liberation from karma, from this cycle of samsara, to attain who you truly are, to realize, who am I truly? Who am I? Yeah, that's the question already, like every great tradition has asked itself. The Greeks have had it written, know yourself, yeah? Like, am I? When you attain moksha, you just don't know it only like rationally. You be it. You realize your true identity, like in the Bhagavad Gita, and one of the scriptures Krishna describes, where you are centered in yourself and you enjoy the beatitude, the bliss of the self in yourself. Yeah, you don't need external things. you are realized that you are the spark of God. So moksha, liberation from bondage, is one goal, one step. Because once you have realized, it's actually a means to an end. Moksha, liberation from bondage, is not the final goal. It's a means to an end. Because once I have realized my true self, once I have realized my Atman, my soul, self-realization, Atma Anubhavan, once I have realized myself, then I will be free from all egoism, all arrogance, all limitations, all mind, all desires, all those obstacles which make me limited, which make me not unconditional, but always conditional. So it is said that firstly you have to realize the self, because the self in itself is absoluteness, pure love, right? So once I have realized that selfless state, then the actual goal can be fulfilled, which is the second point, the eternal loving servitude at the lotus feet of God, the lotus feet of Narayana, at the lotus feet of the ultimate, like Lakshmi is depicted, like being in this loving relationship, the beloved, with the ultimate beloved one. Okay? That is the goal of life. So 2 steps, moksha, attain moksha, self-realization, and then second step, attain God realization and eternally be in this loving, experiencing the bliss of this love relationship. And then of course we had the nature, the nature of God, the 3 tattvas. We have what is the goal and what else we need to know. Okay, what's the method to reach that goal? Hita, which is the method, or also the cosmic order, how things function. Yeah, so the method Hita is now, there's different ways. So one is Bhakti. Bhakti translated means devotion for God. Yeah, love and devotion, and explicitly for God. You cannot have bhakti for anything else. You cannot be for your dog or for your ice cream. Devotion for your sweets. No. Bhakti is only towards God. So there's different forms of bhakti, but when we speak here in the method about it, then it's about love in action. As you can see here, it says prem in action, or devotion. So bhakti here is translated in the idea of being prem, or divine love. Prem is another word, is the real word for divine love, in action or devotion. You see, just shortly, when we look at love, we don't understand the word love. We say, I love chocolate, I love ice cream, I love you. When God speaks about love, when the masters speak about love, when the scriptures speak about love, then they don't speak about this love. What we speak about is always limited. It's always related to an outside object. I love this, I love that, I love this, I love that. When this form of love, prem, is an inner love, which is directed towards the ultimate. This love never ends. It is a constant growing, and there's nothing higher to it. Yeah? It is eternal, always growing, and there's nothing higher to it. It's not today it's there, tomorrow it's not there. When I start my ice cream, it's there. When I've finished the ice cream, it's gone. It's always growing. The experience of love is always growing. That is an idea what is contained in prem. So bhakti is one approach to attain this ultimate loving relationship. We could also say, to be more precise, a sadhana bhakti. Sadhana means spiritual practice. So the practice of bhakti, there's different ways of practicing bhakti. Like, for example, doing your japam, reciting the name of God. Yeah? Smaranam, constant remembrance of the name of God. That is one form of bhakti, which will increase this love inside of us. Hearing the glory of the Lord, hearing the glories of God and the relationships with the devotees. Shravana bhakti is another form of bhakti. Hearing the glory, also that enhances the love, nourishes the soul, increases the love for God. Singing the glory of God, kirtana bhakti, yeah, worshipping through puja, archana bhakti, yeah, doing rituals, worshipping, praying, surrendering, bowing down to Him, yeah, making prostrations, vandana bhakti. So there's different forms of expressing the love for God, doing your meditation, meditating on God, yeah. All of this, which also in Bhakti Marga is very much present. Atma Kriya Yoga, a form of meditation, we will speak another time about it, which contains all these forms of love. Japam, the chanting of the name of God, the pujas, the rituals, the singing, the remembrance, all of this is an expression of love. Love in action, prem in action. You can see this, just to give you a little idea, when the great sages speak about love for God or unconditional love, just to give us a glimpse, it's often related to the idea of when you're in a relationship. Just try to remember when you were fresh in love. Yeah, when you were freshly in love. When you are fully in love, when you meet somebody and you're absolutely in love, whom do you think of when you're freshly in love? Yes, probably of your beloved. Whom you want to spend your time with your beloved. Yeah, everything just turns around your beloved. You can't wait to see your beloved, to be with your beloved. If you have a rendezvous with your beloved, you will do everything. You will make yourself, you beautify yourself, you will cook the best food, you will check what your beloved loves the most so that you can please him. That is what love does. When you're freshly in love, you rarely think of yourself, you always think of the beloved one, isn't it? Similarly, a mother to a child or a parent to a child. How much sacrifice, how selfless expresses that love towards that child. These are some ideas which are given, which give us a glimpse of what selfless love means. They have nothing to do with this ultimate love because they are still related to an outside limited reality. But just to get an idea, how great do I feel when I am freshly in love? Everything is perfect. Even my boss, who is maybe really tough and rough, I accept it, no problem, because I'm in love. Everything is great. You see the world through this pink glasses, everything is great. Yeah, when you're in love, everything is great. That is just to give us an idea how great we feel then. How much greater is this divine love? The love for God. Prem in action. So when you are really in love, what you try when you are in love with somebody, you always try to give your best. You always express more your love. You bring some flowers, nice for the person. You write a poem, you sing a song for him or her or whatever. Not because otherwise the beloved one won't love you, but it's just an expression of love. And that is what bhakti is in relation to God. When you make offerings, when you worship Him, when you bow down to Him, and there is this, because it's an expression of love. That is what bhakti means in that sense. Yeah, sadhana bhakti being one method to attain this realization and this eternal loving relationship. Further, more precise in relation to the Sri Sampradaya, to our spiritual tradition, to the Ramanuja Sampradaya, the more prominent method is actually prapatti. Prapatti is self-surrender or taking refuge. Because in Bhakti, in this love expression, love in action, you need certain qualifications. Yeah, if you want to sing a song, you need to know to sing a song somehow. Yeah, even if you sing wrong, you need to know some basics. If you want to do worship, you need to have some knowledge. All of it needs a certain qualification. Prapatti, self-surrender, taking refuge, needs no qualification whatsoever. It's the sole idea of, Lord, I give myself to you, I take refuge at thy feet, please save me, take care of me, I'm dependent on you, take care of me. Everybody can do that. That culminates in the idea of Sharanagati, the last point which you can see, which is this qualified, the resulting state of surrendered devotion, like a complete abandoning of all methods, all ideas, and full self-surrender in love and devotion towards God. Becoming empty like the flute of Krishna, like I am yours. Like Christ has said, seek first the kingdom of God and everything else will be given to you. Abandon everything. Yeah? Make him your sole refuge place. That is what Sharanagati is, which is actually the highest way, the highest method given by RAMANUJA'S, by this tradition. Yeah, so this is the method where we had the three tattvas, the three realities, the conscious, unconscious, and Ishvara. That's the composition of this absolute. Yeah, the absolute is qualified by these three realities. We have the goal, which is firstly self-realization and then God-realization, and the methods to attain that through bhakti, through self-surrender, and Sharanagati, complete surrendered devotion. That is basically the essence, or like the basic ideas of the Sri Sampradaya, or of the VISHISHTA, ADVAITA, VEDANTA idea. These three principles are very basic to understand. It's going very deep. We will look next time a little bit more into detail into different aspects, like the concept of Brahman, the concept of this absolute, the concept of the Atman, and so on, like just that we have a bit more of an idea how deep this Vedanta philosophy is. But this is just to give you a taste to understand, okay, what does it speak about? So we looked at the theology of Vaishnavas in general today. Then we went into the Sri Vaishnava tradition and looked how that theology is built, with the principal deity as Lakshmi, Ramanuja as the founding acharya. Yeah? And then we went into the philosophy, which is a qualified non-dualism, composed of three realities, with the goal of attaining eternal loving servitude in the approach of loving him, surrendering to him. Because the last point, philosophy and religion, but mainly philosophy, has to answer certain questions to become practical, because otherwise we are back in our mind and it's all just nice talk. But what does it give us? Because like I said, Paramahamsa Vishwananda always says, knowledge is only really helpful if it gives you strength on your spiritual path and strengthens your love relationship with God. Yeah? So therefore, how does this practically apply? Philosophy must answer the questions. Who is God? Who am I? What is my relationship with God? what is my relationship to this world, and what is my goal? These questions must be answered by a philosophy to become practical, to improve somebody's life, to improve somebody's spiritual upliftment. We will look at this more profound the next time in the next session. Just in 1 minute, let me try to answer these questions now in relation to what we heard today. Who is God? God is the ultimate everything, Sriman Narayana, the one who is present within everybody, and everything is present within him. Who am I? I am an Atman, a divine being, not this body, a part of this ultimate Narayana, ultimate of the part of God. What is my relationship with God? My relationship with God is a relationship of eternal love and servitude. What is my relationship with this world, to this world? This world is a platform in which I can experience and develop and re-establish this loving relationship, get rid of my karma, and attain again this divine state. And what is my goal? My goal is to firstly realize who I truly am, not just know it, realize who I am, to then be eternally in a loving relationship with the ultimate. These are these 5 questions answered in a very simplistic way. And of course, once you start to get into those questions and into the answers and start to meditate and reflect on them, then they are gonna shape and guide your life in certain direction. Yeah, because of course, if your goal is to know yourself, if your goal is to be in love relationship with God, who is omnipresent within yourself, meaning to love firstly yourself, within everybody else, to love your neighbor, to love your next, to love nature, to love life. If you know that this world is a platform where you can actually achieve that, then problems which will come are not anymore problems, but they are opportunities where you get a chance to see the true meaning, to learn something, to overcome yourself, to grow, because you know that God really loves you and takes care of you, that you are in an eternal loving relationship with him, because you are a part of him. You are this divine spark, and he is the ultimate from which you are a part of. Yeah, so it can become very much a guiding, a guide for your life, for your path, how to live your daily life. Yeah, so that it becomes practical and it's not just abstract. In that sense, we have finished for today session. Again, I thank you for your attention. I hope you liked it. I hope you got some understanding of Vaishnavism, the difference between a theology and a philosophy, and maybe some interest was created. Maybe you identify with some of those ideas. Feel free to ask questions in the comments if you have, or to visit the webpage of Bhakti Marga to find out more. Next time, on next Saturday, like I said, we're gonna look into the Sri Sampradaya, this spiritual tradition, a little bit more closely. Some more principles we're gonna look up. And yeah, I hope I see you next time. Feel free to share this video. Please do subscribe. Give it a like if you liked it. And in that sense, I wish you a nice weekend and all the best. Jai Gurudev.